Joel Embiid is at it again. For those of you who love Joel Embiid, like myself, saw another reason why we were exposed to his personality. And for those of you who hate Joel Embiid, which seems to be a growing population, he added some fuel to that fire in his latest sit down with the New York Times, where he discussed just about everything in the NBA world and in life himself. Now, beyond these tweets that I'm going to highlight that kind of got the internet stirring, there was a lot of good stuff from Joel Embiid. Particularly, he opened up on his kind of reasoning decision for why not to represent France that I frankly think is honorable. He talked a lot about the history between Cameroon and France, the two countries, as well as a lot more about him, his outlook, and everything like that. So I would recommend diving into the full interview and reading everything on that. But I did want to highlight kind of the notable quotes that tended to take off and have Twitter set a storm as things naturally are. Particularly Legion Hoops was the account that was on top of this, which is continually emerging as a more and more anti-Joel Embiid account, but that is a story for another day. So let's start off with a couple of these quotes here. I want to start with this about Team USA and LeBron James specifically. And Joel Embiid was asked if he has any doubts about if Team USA will win the gold medal, to which he replies, quote, "You look at the talent that the U.S. has, but there's equal talent on the other teams. And the talent that's on the U.S. team, you also got to understand most of these guys are older. The LeBron now is not the LeBron that was a couple years ago. So it's a big difference. Everybody would also tell you, and you can see for yourself, the athletic LeBron, dominant that he was a couple years ago, is not the same that he is now. I think people get fooled by the big names on paper. But those names have been built throughout their career, and now they're older. They're not what they used to be." So for Joel Embiid, and this is going to kind of be my premise for all of these quotes here, it is you're not saying the wrong. Well, what you're saying is not untrue, but you certainly could put it better. And I think he would make his life and everyone's life a little bit easier if you just gave the coached up PR answers, which are so simple. Like there's nothing wrong with simply replying to that question. I mean, we have the most talent. We're figuring out how to all work together. Still a work in progress, getting on the same page, but I have no doubt that once we do that, we're going to be a great team and no one's going to beat us. That's a great answer. There's nothing wrong with that, and that would not cause any buzz whatsoever. But that's never been the way that Joel Embiid rocks. Let's not forget this is the same dude that before he ever stepped foot and played in an NBA game, that he was shooting a shot at Rihanna saying, "Babe, are you single or not?" with the @ or tweeting at Kim Kardashian, say, "Hey, I want you to come slide in my DMs at Kim Kardashian," before apologizing that he did not realize she was married there. This is the Joel Embiid that it always was. And by the way, this is not a dumb guy. The Joel Embiid is an incredibly intelligent human being. He knows what he's doing to an extent. He is more real than I think most athletes are, which again, some people will respect him for that. Some people will hate him for that. And the bottom line is the people who have already made Joel Embiid a villain are not going to change that. The people that hate him are just going to pile onto it. Personally, I do find it a little bit charming how open he is, that he gives more real answers than pretty much any athlete at this point, that it's become so commonplace to be wrapped up in these PR answers like I'm talking about, that he does give a little bit something different there. So to give another example of that, and this one also I saw got people fired up quite a bit, he was asked about, he said he could be the GOAT if it weren't for the injuries. And his full quote here saying, quote, "I think that I'm that talented. If you think about it, the thing that has stopped me all these years is just freak injuries. Every single playoffs, regular season, people falling on my knees or breaking my face twice. It's always freak injuries at the right time." And I get the automatic pushback here that we can do what ifs for just about every player, but let's not discount that talent or skill has never been Joel Embiid's issue. It has been the injuries, it has been the health, and that's been what has held him back primarily. Like, to put it in perspective here, amongst all time in NBA history, we're talking about this dude leading the entire league history in points per minute with 0.87 points per minute, 433 games played, 12,071 points, and 13,835 minutes. That's ahead of Luka Doncic, Michael Jordan, George Gervin, Trae Young, all these guys, these Wilt Chamberlain, all these all-time names, that Joel Embiid eclipses that for how productive that he has been. Now, I know the immediate pushback comes with the playoff success, and that's for sure notable, that's going to be a wall that Joel Embiid has to break down before we can start having these types of conversations. But I still think it goes undersold just how talented this guy is. Like, he was in the process of a historically great, all-time great, arguably the number one most statistically impressive season of all time prior to getting injured last year. And to dive into a little bit of what that looked like, 34.7 points per game, which would have led the league. He was on pace to for the third straight season there. 11 rebounds per game, 5.6 assists, 1.7 blocks, 1.2 steals. Shot 52.9% from the field, 38.8% from three. 57.1% on corner threes. This is just ridiculous stuff. This is not normal stuff for any sort of NBA player. I don't care if you're a big man with this type of skill. I don't care if you're a guard flying around the perimeter. That is just a level of production that is incredibly difficult to reach. And that was not all that Joel Embiid said in that interview. I did want to dive into this quote here because we all know one of the biggest stories of the offseason was with JJ Redick taking that Lakers head coaching job. There is this familiarity with JJ Redick and Joel Embiid. They still talk about how their two-man action was one of the most productive offensive plays that Embiid has ever had, and I think that's absolutely true there. They have like a level of chemistry on playing each other that was super important to the Sixers team, and obviously really translated on the production that each of them had. That JJ Redick having his best years in Philadelphia, Joel Embiid, that kind of automatic two-man option was great and something that I don't think has been able to be reached with any other partner, whether it is Steph Curry, Tyrese Maxey, Jimmy Butler. None of these guys have had quite the same level of gravity. Even the James Harden and Joel Embiid kind of, you can get me with some stats on the pick and roll numbers here, but just from watching and how unstoppable it was for defense, it did feel like there was something to the Redick and Embiid partnership there. But Embiid was asked particularly about Redick's decision to take that Lakers head coaching job, to which he said, quote, "If I was him, I don't know if that's the perfect situation." Maybe he thinks that's the perfect situation. It's kind of a make or break situation because if you succeed, great, you're going to be coaching for years. But if you don't succeed, those coaches are usually bound to be fired within a year or two. I love him. I'm happy for him, but that's a tough job. And once again, he is not wrong by any means here. That to just purely answer the question and give the honesty on what JJ Redick's situation in Los Angeles, that's a really difficult job to have. That as a first-time head coach, you're under the bright lights of Los Angeles with this prestigious Lakers franchise. You have LeBron James, who, as Joel pointed out, is not the LeBron James that he once was and still a very good player. You have Anthony Davis, who's coming off a career year, was absolutely terrific last year, beyond what I even think he's been recognized with credit as. And then what is there beyond that? There are, the Rui Hachimuras, the Austin Reeves. It's a lot of guys who are good players, but when you look at the Western Conference, the Denver Nuggets of the world, the OKC Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, do you really feel great about the Lakers having a chance to be better than those teams? Because straight up, I don't. I don't see a world where that is possible, whether this is JJ Redick, Phil Jackson, or whoever else at head coach. I do think this is a position where JJ is essentially in a job that is hired to be fired, as you're in a win-now position as a coach without the win-now pieces to be competitive. So it is tough. And I do think the Lakers will be solid. I don't think they're going to be a bad team. And in general, I think in the long run, JJ Redick's going to end up a pretty good NBA head coach if that is what he wants to pursue and continue forever. I'm also surprised JJ Redick was ready to step off the position that he was in. I think he had a pretty sweet setup with the podcast, with his ability, the Mind the Game podcast, doing that with LeBron, as well as obviously his own stuff that he's been doing for years at this point. I thought he had a pretty sweet gig just covering the NBA in the way that he does, but it is clear he's got that hunger, and respect to JJ for going out and pursuing it there. So for Joel Embiid here, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not calling you a liar in any single one of these answers. In fact, if anything, you're being incredibly true on each and every one of them. But I do think you could make your life and everyone's life a little bit easier if there was not this stir-the-pot nature that is very clearly inherently inside him. That there is this desire to be a troll. We know the troll experience. He certainly has cooled off from the level of, poke the bear or stir the pot that he was at the early parts of his career. But the bottom line is it is a fair critique to throw back that you can't have this level of wanting to stir this pot or throw criticism when you don't have the resume that you should have. That we're not having these legitimate conversations about you being the GOAT because you have not achieved all that you still can in your NBA career. And that all still can happen. And by the way, if we do get a Sixers championship, the Joel Embiid world tour of telling everyone whatever he wants is going to be tremendous. That I can only imagine the quotes that are going to come out of there from every single press obligation that he does, every single podcast that he wants to hop on, TV show that he wants to chat on. Joel Embiid will let the world have it, and those will be some awesome moments if it occurs. But until that is the case, you got to keep putting the legwork and making sure that happens. That as much as there are fair critiques to the Sixers for not having the supporting cast or guys that have not stepped up, this still falls on Joel Embiid's shoulders. And for Joel, the clock is ticking. That you are 30 years old entering this season. That you need to make sure you're doing everything possible to put yourself in the best spot. I personally am loving him playing for Team USA. He's coming off his best performance against South Sudan. I know Team USA was a little bit of scare there. And by the way, it ended up being LeBron James being the guy that ultimately gave this team a chance, put them over the edge there. But this has been a work in progress for him. I still would like to see Joel Embiid show a renewed commitment to just the shape that he's in. If he can drop some weight and come in the latest level of weight that it has been in years, I think that could go a huge ways to just having his body hold up over the entirety of the season, limiting that injury risk as much as possible for a man of that size. So there's things that he can control beyond just blowing off the blame on other people, which is certainly, fair when you look at the Ben Simmons of the world and just the failed roster construction, coaching, all these things. There are issues on the Sixers team that go beyond Joel, but you do got to take some accountability, look yourself in the mirror, and do everything possible in your shoes as well. So personally, I don't have a huge issue with Joel Embiid saying it. I would prefer that he doesn't. I would much prefer he gives the coached up PR answers. But the bottom line is, this is how he's wired. That's how that guy wants to talk, and I don't expect it to stop anytime soon. So now his time is to back it up and prove why all these things are the case when you do step on the floor. We will see how that goes down as things progress. The Olympics are gearing up, so we'll have a chance to continue to watch Joel Embiid playing with the best of the best. As I mentioned, I do think he's kicking off the rust, figuring things out, and that is awesome to watch on full display. So we'll see how that all goes down, but appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning into this video here. If you have not already, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video, and any comments you have below. And I'll be back next time on Sixers Digest chatting it up. Peace.